Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today for Sketchbook Sunday we are going to play with pastels, both stick pastels, the NuPastels, and PanPastels. You can use whatever pastels you have at home, and you could even use paint too if you wanted to follow along with that. Now I've got my NuPastels out and ready to go, and I've got the reference photo up on the screen. So if you want to sketch along with something else, please feel free to do so. I'm starting off by just marking about 8 centimeters from the top of my paper, and this is a 9" by 12" sheet of Canson pastel paper, like the Canson Me Tints. You want to use the rough side, and then I'm sketching in the mountains far away. By the way, the real-time version of this video is actually up now in Critique Club, so members can find it as the June bonus lesson number 1. And I put my pastel course on sale for 30% off. Use the coupon code PASTEL30 or click the discount link in the video description if you'd like to learn more about painting with pastels. After I had my basic sketch in, I went ahead and just scribbled in some colors. On this first layer, I'm using NuPastel, and the reason for this is these sticks are really hard and dry. They're kind of like Conte crayon, if you've ever used them. They're not very dusty, and they just allow me to put down like nice shocks of bright color without a lot of dust, and it's going to be easy for me to put color on top of them because they are not like really dusty. I'm going really bold. I'm looking at my reference photo, looking for those bright bits of color and just blocking them in. Now, anytime you see me remove my paper from my table, I just have it taped down to a cutting mat. I'm tapping it into a trash can that's underneath my desk. I like to do that rather than blow the dust off of my paper because you will get a little bit of dust buildup now and then. And the reason for that is so you don't accidentally breathe in any of those particles. Some artist pastels have more toxic chemicals, so it's just a good rule of thumb to get into right off the bat. And I actually recommend that if you're getting started with pastels, to start with an inexpensive brand such as the Faber-Castell Goldfaber or Studio line. I think they've changed their name over the years, so you might have one of their older sets and it might not say Goldfaber on it. But that's a really reliable set. It's not very expensive and you get a lot of colors. So the other thing that's nice about that is that if you use up a color, you can go to the art store and buy one stick of a similar color. Since pastels are opaque, what you see is what you get. So you don't need to swatch them out. You just pick up what looks right and it's going to work. Now, once I got a nice layer of color down, I can actually blend with either my finger or a pastel sponge. It's completely up to you. I tend to blend my first layer together after I have everything laid down. Now, after I've gotten some nice bright colors in, I went in with that, light kind of powder blue, and also back in with that indigo that I originally sketched with. I like to keep reusing colors to create harmony throughout the piece. Now, I prefer to blend with my fingers on this first layer because it really pushes the pastel into the paper and integrates it, so it's much less likely to flake off later. And I just want to cover up the tooth of the paper in the sky. Now, I did choose a grayish blue color, so if some of that color shows through, it's not the end of the world. But I do like to have a nice smooth effect on that background so that the strokes I put on later can really show up and be textured if I want them to be. And again, just blending here with my fingers. Now, another fun thing to use that's very inexpensive are foam eyeshadow applicators. You can pick them up at any department store or drugstore or online. They're just very inexpensive and they work really well. I'm also using this kind of indigo color that I sketched with to sketch in areas that will be shoreline and kind of reedy. And I've got this midnight green color that I'm using to fill in some of these larger masses of reeds. And the reason I'm using this dark color, even though the reeds you can see are a little bit lighter and greener, is because that can be my shadow, and then I can overlay the lighter colors because pastels are opaque. And I'm also putting some of that midnight green to shadow on the rock there in front because, again, it will be my shadow underneath. So what I did here was I went ahead and washed my hands, got everything cleaned up, and brought my PanPastels out. Now, PanPastels are, they're an awful lot like eyeshadow. And in fact, before I invested in my PanPastels, what I did was I went to Target and I bought the cheapest set of eyeshadow I could find. That was a big, colorful set. I think I paid about $14, and it was that ELF brand. And I played with them in eyeshadow applicators and painted with them to see if I liked it before I invested in PanPastels because they can be a little bit expensive. I'll have a list of materials I used in the video description along with links so you can check these out if you want. But if you are looking to invest in PanPastels, my recommendation would be to get the painting set first because you can mix all your other colors from the painting set. It has all the pure colors. And I'll go in a little bit more with my advice on picking sets in the video description, and I went into that a lot during the demo for Critique Club if you're interested. And with the PanPastels, you use them like kind of like eyeshadow. You use an applicator, and I actually bought the sponge tools. They're called soft tools, and I'll link to them as well. I bought those before I ever bought the PanPastels to use with my other pastels, so they're handy any way you look at it. So I'm using those to pick up the color from the pan and then bring it over to my palette. Now when I need to clean between colors, I just wipe them on an old rag, and my old rags, basically the best rags are like old t-shirts, my husband's old t-shirts. I just cut them into squares, and they are so good for painting rags. They just work perfectly. And that's also really handy too, because you'll never get an old t-shirt out of rotation unless you cut it up in pieces. You might keep an old t-shirt thinking you're going to use it for a rag, but then it gets mixed up with somebody's clothes. Just cut it right up, and then everyone will know it's one of your painting rags. Now, can you see how easy it is to layer up and build up those fluffy clouds? Just make sure you wipe your pastel tool off onto a rag, and you'll be able to go in with lighter colors. Now, I do have several of these palette knives with the sponges on the end, because each set of PanPastels you buy comes with a few, which is really handy. That's why another reason I recommend buying the sets of 20, because if you buy the painting set, and then the tints, and then the shades, and then the extra dark shades. That is, if you want those sets, you're not going to have duplicates except for white and black, but they all come with these extra sponges and tools, which are really handy. Now, I went ahead and I sprayed a coat of fixative on this at this point. Because the PanPastels are softer, they'd be more prone to being wiped off if I go to put another layer of colors. And since I have so many of the palette tools from the different sets, what I do is I'll try to keep each palette tool for a color family. Like I might have one for reds and pinks, and one for oranges and yellows, and one for really light colors, and one for black, and so on and so forth. So I don't have to clean them very often, and it just works really well. Now, I did actually go ahead and wash all of my sponges, because I hadn't in a long time, after I was done doing this tutorial, and they wash fine. They will stain, so that's another reason just to kind of keep them in their color families, and that way you'll be able to remember what you used for what when you're painting, and you won't get confused by your previous color on there. And they're just like little socks. They just slide over the end of those little plastic painting knives and work great. So I did get a fresh one here, because my white one was pretty dingy, and I wanted to make sure I had that a nice fresh color here. And this is like a really pale orange. It's the orange tint, and it just is so buttery and bright, and I was having so much fun painting this. I'm putting in my pops of yellow. I just want to make sure that I avoid blue, but since I use the fixative, it's not going to mess up any colors I have underneath, which is really important. The fixative I'm using is fairly inexpensive. It's the Krylon workable fixative. You can find it in craft stores. You can also order it online. It's between $6 and $10 depending on where you get it, and it can last a long time. So you don't have to feel like you have to be precious with it. And honestly, it's not that much more than hairspray for an archival product, so I highly recommend it. But hey, I'm known to use hairspray on my greeting cards and stuff too, so if you're working in a sketchbook, you don't care about longevity, grab that Aquanet and have a great time with it, because it will do the job. It just might turn yellow over time. So to get that really crisp line for the highlight at the horizon, I set that ruler down, but I set it down with the cork side up so I didn't get pastel on that, which would be hard to clean. I just swiped it across. It worked really good. I'm making sure to add some of those ripples into the water as well, but I'm also being careful that I don't overdo it. Now, this painting took me about an hour in real time to paint, and something I noticed with pastels is if I spend too much time, I can really easily not really mess it up, but overwork it. And there's something about the directness of pastel, the vibrancy, the punchy color and the punchy brush strokes that I think is so beautiful that I don't want to overwork it and make it refined. I want to have that impression of the time and the place. It's a very good tool for doing, good medium for doing impressionistic work. Now you can see here, I'm taking the NuPastels and I'm going back in and I'm overlaying some of the lighter colors to give me some texture, the texture of fir trees on those faraway islands and peninsula areas. And I'm also going to do that for reeds. So you can layer up, especially when you use that fixative underneath. I can also go back in with the pastel applicators. These are just little eyeshadow applicators, and add some lighter PanPastel. It's very versatile. And something else you can do, if you like a little bit more of a refined look, you can use a PanPastel's undercolor pencil. So it almost works like the colored pencil powder blender, but you can like tone, do most of your painting with the PanPastels, and then go do your refined work with your colored pencils, which adds versatility to what you already have. And I'm a big believer that when you add a tool to your stash, it should make your other supplies more useful, not less useful, you know? So sometimes we get in this kind of collector mode where we just want something new and shiny, but if that new thing doesn't improve upon what you already have, like you're upgrading a supply, or it doesn't make your other supplies more useful, you might want to think twice about getting it, because you could just be getting redundant stuff or stuff that's kind of fun and a thrill now, but might not suit you long term. Something else I wanted to mention about the PanPastels is if you buy individual colors, they come with a lid, but when you buy them in a set, they come with a couple lids, but everyone doesn't have a lid. And you'll want to get those, see those trays that I have them in? I know you can't see much of that on the screen. They don't come with the trays. I think if you get the set of 80, it might come with 4 of the big trays, but the 20 sets that I had to buy the trays separately. But I do recommend them because it kind of keeps them secure on your desk, because you don't want to drop them because they will shatter like an eyeshadow. So, and you know, definitely try eyeshadow if you're curious, but you're not sure if you want to invest. Now I'm using a really light kind of chartreuse NuPastel to scribble on that mossy texture on that rock. It worked really well. I'm using a little bit of a lighter color. I think it's probably lime peel, just to kind of scumble on that texture. I just had so much fun with this project. The great thing about this was that, I don't know, if you follow my sat chats on YouTube, you'll know that I recently painted my main table because it was really textured and rough after so many layers of Braillard paint. And it was nice because now it's nice and smooth and I could clean off all the dust really easily, which is really handy. And I'm adding little shocks of this reddish brown color because that's really going to make that green pop, because red and green are opposites. So just having that kind of toned down browny red is enough to really give that mossy bit some like earthiness, but also a little spark of color. And I'm adding in a little bit of that kind of light olive green into the reeds that are kind of growing out of the pond as well. I just love a sunset on a pond. It reminds me of summer. It's my favorite places to be in the summer, or on a pond or on a lake in the sun. I just think it's a lot of fun. Now I am deciding, well, I have decided that I want to just pop my contrast a little bit more, so I'm going in with a black pastel. I save black to the last, and I don't always use it, but I find that if you need that little pop of contrast at the end, being able to add that black pastel and have that be the darkest thing that you have is very useful. It's a very powerful tool. And also save some white for the last, and you'll find that you can really bring out that contrast and those highlights and really make it look fantastic. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, if you'd like the real-time tutorial for this, you can find it in Critique Club. There'll be a link below, and also a coupon for 30% off my soft pastels for a beginner course. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.